The New Mexico sun was a merciless thing. It beat down on the broken wagon wheel with the same indifference it showed to the bleached bones scattered along the trail. Clara Morrison pressed a damp handkerchief to her neck, tasting alkali dust on her cracked lips. The oxen stood with their heads low, sides heaving in the afternoon heat that shimmered off the red rocks like waves on an invisible sea. She'd been foolish to attempt this journey alone, but what choice did a widow have? Back east, the whispers had followed her like shadows. Too young, too pretty, too dangerous to the wives of respectable men. Out here, she'd hoped to find something different, a new beginning in Las Cruces, where her late husband's cousin ran a boarding house. The wheel had given way just past Mesilla, where the road narrowed between towering mesas the color of dried blood. Now she stood in the vast emptiness, the silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. The mountains rose in the distance, purple-black against the white-hot sky, and between her and them stretched miles of nothing but creosote bush, prickly pear, and the occasional sentinel saguaro. Clara tried again to lift the wagon bed while sliding the spare wheel into place, but it was useless. Her hands, once soft from needlework and piano playing, were already blistered from the rains. Sweat soaked through her traveling dress, impractical brown wool that had seemed sensible in Missouri, but now felt like wearing a blanket in hell itself. The sound of horses made her freeze. 4 riders appeared through the heat haze, moving slow and easy down the trail. White men. She saw with relief that immediately turned to unease. Their clothes were trail-worn, faces shadowed under wide-brimmed hats, and something in their posture made her step closer to the wagon where her husband's Winchester rested. Well. The lead rider, a man with tobacco-stained teeth and pale eyes, pulled up his mount. "What have we here? Lady in distress?" "I'm managing fine, thank you." Clara kept her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. "Just a broken wheel. I'll have it fixed shortly." The men exchanged glances, grins spreading across their faces like oil on water. "That's so. Mighty heavy work for such delicate hands." The rider swung down from his saddle, spurs jangling. "Where's your man? He'll be along." The lie came quick, but not quick enough. She saw the knowledge in their eyes. A woman alone was fair game in this lawless stretch. "Funny thing," another rider said, circling his horse around to her other side. "We've been riding this trail all day. Ain't seen nobody heading this way." The leader moved closer, close enough that she could smell the whiskey and sweat on him. "Maybe we ought to keep you company. Wouldn't be gentlemanly to leave a lady alone out here. All sorts of dangers." "Apaches, bandits." His grin widened. "Worse things." Clara's hand inched toward the rifle. "I said I'm fine. Now don't be unfriendly." He reached for her arm, and she jerked back, stumbling against the wagon. The other men laughed, a sound like coyotes circling. "The lady asked you to leave." The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The riders spun, hands dropping to their guns, but Clara saw him first, a figure on a paint horse at the crest of a low rise, silhouetted against the burning sky. He rode down toward them with the fluid grace of someone born to the saddle, and as he drew closer, Clara's breath caught, an Apache warrior. His black hair fell past his shoulders, held back by a cloth band. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, skin burnished dark by the sun. He wore a mix of traditional dress and adapted clothing, deerskin leggings, a cotton shirt, silver ornaments at his throat. A rifle rested across his saddle, and she glimpsed the bow and quiver on his back. The white rider's hands tightened on their weapons, but something in the Apache's bearing made them hesitate. He stopped his horse 20 feet away, dark eyes moving from the men to Clara and back again. When he spoke, his English carried only a slight accent. "The woman does not want your company. This ain't your concern. Apache." The leader's voice had gone hard, but Clara heard the fear underneath. "Best ride on before there's trouble." The warrior's expression didn't change. "I think you are the ones who will ride on. 4 against 1. You savages never were good at arithmetic." The Apache smiled then, a cold thing that never reached his eyes. "Look behind you." The riders turned. Clara followed their gaze and felt her stomach drop. Along the ridge, barely visible among the rocks, were more figures. How many? She couldn't tell, but enough. The riders saw it too. "This ain't over," the leader snarled, but he was already backing toward his horse. Within moments, they were mounted and riding hard toward the eastern horizon, dust devils spinning in their wake. Clara stood frozen as the figures on the ridge melted away like mirages. Only the warrior remained, walking his horse closer. This near, she could see the scars on his arms, the watchful intelligence in his face. Her hand found the rifle, though she knew it would do little good. "You travel alone?" It wasn't a question. His eyes took in the wagon's contents, the lack of any sign of male presence. "This is foolish. My husband died." The words came out defensive. "I'm going to Las Cruces." He dismounted in one smooth motion, moving to examine the broken wheel. Clara watched him, torn between gratitude and the warnings she'd heard all her life about Indians, especially Apache. They were raiders, killers, savages who tortured their victims, or so every newspaper and army report claimed. This cannot be fixed here. He straightened, and she realized he was taller than she'd thought. "Night comes soon. You cannot stay in the open. I'll manage." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her vulnerability. Those men will return, with more. Clara knew he was right. Already the sun was sliding toward the western peaks, painting the rocks in shades of fire. The temperature would plummet once darkness fell, and she had no illusions about her ability to defend herself if those riders came back with friends. "There is water and shelter an hour's ride north," the Apache said. "I will show you. Why would you help me?" He gathered the reins of his paint horse, preparing to mount. "Perhaps because you did not scream when you saw me. Perhaps because those men needed to remember this is still Apache land, no matter what your treaties say." He swung onto his horse with that same liquid grace. "Or perhaps because leaving you here would be the same as killing you myself, and I have seen enough death." Clara looked at her broken wagon, at the vast emptiness stretching in every direction, at this strange warrior who'd appeared like something out of the land itself. She thought of her mother's voice. "Never trust an Indian. Clara, they're not like us." But what had trusting her own kind gotten her? A husband dead of fever, a life of whispered scandals, men who looked at her like those riders had, as something to be taken. "I need to bring what I can carry," she said. The warrior nodded. "Be quick. The desert has eyes." As Clara gathered her essentials, water, food, the rifle, a blanket, the last of the day's heat began to fade. Shadows pooled in the arroyos like dark water. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, and its pack answered, their voices threading through the coming dusk. She looked back once at the wagon that held everything she owned, then climbed awkwardly onto the back of the Apache's horse. He said nothing, just urged the paint forward into the gathering darkness. His body was warm and solid against her back, smelling of smoke and leather and something wild she couldn't name. "What do I call you?" she asked as they rode into the purple twilight. "Kiona," he said, and she felt the word rumble through his chest. "I'm Clara." He made a sound that might have been acknowledgement. Around them, the desert came alive with the night sounds, the rustle of hunting creatures, the distant scream of a mountain cat. Clara had never felt so far from civilization, so stripped of everything she'd known. Yet, as they rode through that vast darkness with the stars beginning to pierce the sky like silver pins, she felt something else too. Not safe. She wasn't fool enough to feel safe with this dangerous stranger, but alive in a way she hadn't been since long before her husband died. The night stretched ahead, full of uncertainty and the ancient mysteries of this hard land, and Clara Morrison rode into it with an Apache warrior whose motives were as unreadable as the desert itself. Dawn came like a blessing over the desert, painting the rocks in shades of rose and gold. Clara woke stiff and disoriented, wrapped in her blanket near the remains of a small fire. The events of yesterday seemed like a fever dream until she saw Kiona crouched by his horse, checking the animal's hooves with practiced care. They had ridden for hours through the darkness to reach this place, a hidden canyon where water seeped from the rocks into a natural basin. Ancient cottonwoods provided shade, their leaves whispering secrets in the morning breeze. She'd fallen asleep almost immediately, exhausted by fear and travel. Now, watching him in the early light, she felt the full weight of her situation. She'd spent the night in the wilderness with an Apache warrior, a man her people called savage. Yet he hadn't touched her, hadn't even spoken much after they'd made camp. He'd simply ensured she had water and a safe place to rest before disappearing into the darkness to keep watch. The sound of approaching horses shattered the morning peace. Kiona was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand, moving with the fluid speed of a hunting cat. He gestured sharply for Clara to get behind the rocks. "Stay down. Do not show yourself." But it was too late. The riders burst into the canyon, not the 4 from yesterday, but a full dozen, and she recognized their leader immediately. Jake Thornton, who ran with the Collins gang. Her husband had pointed him out once in Santa Fe, warning her to stay clear of such men. "Well now," Thornton drawled. His scarred face split in an ugly grin. "Boys told me there was a pretty widow needs escorting. Didn't mention she'd taken up with a redskin." The outlaws spread out in a half circle, cutting off any escape route. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs as she pressed herself against the cool stone. Kiona stood relaxed, almost casual, but Clara saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers rested near the trigger. "The woman is under my protection. Leave now." Thornton laughed. "Your protection? One Apache against 12 guns." He spat tobacco juice onto the sand. "Step aside. Indian, no need for you to die over some white woman's virtue." "Please," Clara heard herself say, stepping out despite Kiona's warning. "I have nothing of value. Just let us go." "Oh, you got value aplenty. Sweetheart." Thornton's eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Been a long time since we had a woman in camp. The boys get lonely." The first arrow took the man next to Thornton in the shoulder before anyone saw Kiona move. By the time they realized what was happening, he'd already notched a second arrow, the bow singing in his hands. The wounded outlaw screamed, clutching at the shaft protruding from his body. "Kill him!" Thornton roared. Gunfire exploded in the canyon. Clara threw herself behind the rocks as bullets whined overhead, chips of stone stinging her face. She caught glimpses of Kiona, rolling, shooting, moving like smoke through the chaos. His rifle barked once, twice, and men fell. An outlaw came around her hiding spot, and without thinking, Clara grabbed a fist-sized rock and swung it at his head. He went down hard, blood spreading across the sand. His pistol lay inches from her hand. She'd never killed anyone, never even fired at a man, but her fingers closed around the grip. Kiona was pinned behind a fallen cottonwood, 3 outlaws advancing on his position. Clara raised the pistol, her hands shaking. The shot went wide, but it made the men turn. In that instant of distraction, Kiona erupted from cover. His knife flashed in the morning sun, and suddenly there were only 2 outlaws standing. The fight was vicious and quick. These men might be killers, but Kiona fought like the desert itself, harsh, unforgiving, without mercy. When the dust settled, 7 outlaws lay dead or dying. The survivors, including Thornton with a bullet wound in his leg, fled on their horses, their courage evaporating like morning dew. Clara stood frozen, the pistol heavy in her hand, staring at the bodies scattered across the peaceful canyon. Blood soaked into the sand, turning it black. The man she'd struck groaned and tried to rise. Kiona crossed to him in 2 strides and ended his suffering with clinical efficiency. "You're hurt." Clara's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Blood ran down Kiona's arm from a bullet graze, and a cut on his cheek wept red. He glanced at the wounds as if noticing them for the first time. "It is nothing." His eyes found hers, something unreadable in their depths. "You fought. She looked at the pistol still clutched in her white-knuckled grip. "I've never—" "The first killing is the hardest." He began collecting weapons from the dead with methodical precision. It does not get easier, only more necessary. Clara watched him work. This man who just killed 7 others to protect a stranger. The missionaries had told her Indians were godless heathens who delighted in violence. But she saw no joy in Kiona's face, only a weary acceptance. "We cannot stay," he said. "Thornton will bring more men, many more." "Where can we go?" He looked west, toward the mountains. "There are paths through the peaks your people do not know, but the journey is hard. Your shoes," he gestured at her impractical boots, "will not survive it. Then I'll go barefoot if I have to." The words surprised her with their fierceness. "I won't go with those men. I won't." Something shifted in his expression. "You have courage. That is good. You will need it." They gathered what supplies they could from the dead. Ammunition, food, better weapons. Clara tried not to look at the faces of the men sprawled in the dust. One was young, perhaps 20, with a photograph of a woman tucked in his shirt pocket. She wondered if the woman would wait for him, never knowing he'd died trying to kidnap another. Kiona fashioned her makeshift moccasins from one of the outlaw's leather vests, wrapping her feet with strips of cloth. His hands were gentle but impersonal as he worked, and Clara found herself studying the scars that marked his arms and chest. Each one a story. A battle survived. "Your people will say I've kidnapped you," he said as they prepared to leave. "That I've defiled you. My people say many things that aren't true." He looked at her sharply. "You do not fear me?" Clara considered the question. She should fear him. Everything she'd been taught said so. He was Apache, the terror of the frontier. He'd just killed 7 men with bow, blade, and rifle. Yet, "You could have done anything last night. You didn't. You could have left me to those men today. You didn't." She met his gaze steadily. "So no, I don't fear you. Should I? Perhaps." He turned away, but not before she caught something in his expression. Surprise? Respect. "We go, now." They left the Canyon of Death behind. Kiona on his paint horse with Clara mounted behind him. The sun climbed higher, turning the world into a furnace. They rode through landscapes that seemed torn from the earth's fever dreams. Twisted rock formations like frozen screams. Dry washes that spoke of flash floods violent enough to move boulders. Forests of organ pipe cactus reaching toward the merciless sky. Hour after hour they climbed into the mountains, following paths that seemed invisible until Kiona found them. Clara's world narrowed to the rhythm of the horse, the heat pressing down like a physical weight, the solid presence of the man in front of her. They stopped at midday in the shade of an overhang. Kiona rationed their water carefully, making her drink even when she protested she wasn't thirsty. "The desert kills through thirst before anything else," he said. "Your body needs water even when your mind says no. How do you know so much about surviving out here? This is my land. My people have lived here since before your grandfathers' grandfathers were born. The desert is not our enemy. It is our teacher." He looked out over the vast expanse below them. "Your people try to fight it, to change it. That is why it kills them." Clara thought of her husband, determined to farm in land meant for cattle. If anything, of all the emigrants who came west with dreams of conquest, only to be broken by the reality of this unforgiving place. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again. The truth this time. Kiona was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old grief. 3 summers ago, soldiers attacked our camp at dawn. Women and children fled into the desert while the men fought. My sister, she was 15. The soldiers caught her." He didn't need to say more. Clara had heard the stories. The things that happened to Indian women taken by soldiers. The things that happened to any woman caught by violent men. She lived, he continued, but she was never the same. She walked into the desert one night and did not return. He turned to look at Clara. "When I saw you yesterday, surrounded by those men, I saw her. I could not ride away again." The confession hung between them in the shimmering heat. Clara wanted to say something, to offer comfort, but what words could touch such a wound? "I'm sorry," she said finally. "Your sorrow changes nothing, but perhaps helping you balances something. The Apache believe in balance." He stood, ending the conversation. "We go. Thornton's men will not give up easily." As they rode on into the afternoon, Clara felt the weight of his trust. He'd given her a piece of his pain, shown her the man beneath the warrior. The mountains rose around them, ancient and implacable, holding secrets in every shadow. And somewhere behind them, she knew, violent men followed, driven by greed and wounded pride. The sun was beginning its descent when Kiona suddenly tensed. He stopped the horse, head tilted, listening to something Clara couldn't hear. "What is it?" "Riders," he said. "Many, coming fast." Clara's blood turned cold despite the heat. They'd been found. The hidden spring was a miracle in the desert. A thin trickle of water emerging from a crack in the red rock face, pooling in a natural basin worn smooth by centuries. They'd reached it just as the last light faded from the sky, guided by Kiona's knowledge of ancient trails. The pursuing riders had lost them in the maze of canyons, at least for now. Clara knelt by the pool, cupping the cool water in her hands. It tasted of minerals and stone, but after the day's heat, it was sweeter than wine. She watched Kiona fill their waterskins with careful precision, wasting not a drop. "This place is sacred to my people," he said, noticing her wonder. "The old ones carved these." He gestured to the rock face where she could make out faded symbols, spirals, human figures, animals that seemed to dance in the flickering light of their small fire. "How do you purify it?" Clara asked. "The water. Back home, we boil everything, but out here..." Kiona produced a small leather pouch from his pack. "Sand, charcoal from specific woods, certain stones. My grandmother taught me." He showed her how to create a filter using her torn petticoat and layers of sand and charcoal. The earth cleans what the earth provides. As Clara watched him work, she was struck by the contrast. This man who could kill with such efficiency, now teaching her with the patience of a schoolmaster. His hands, which had wielded knife and bow with deadly skill, moved with surprising gentleness as he demonstrated the technique. "Your grandmother," she ventured. "Is she dead, like most of my family?" His voice held no emotion, but she saw the tightening around his eyes. "Soldiers, disease, starvation after they burned our crops. The Apache die many ways now." Clara filtered water in silence, thinking of her own losses, her parents, taken by cholera, her husband, burning with fever in their small homestead. Loss was the common language of the frontier, spoken by all who dared to live here. "Try this." Kiona handed her strips of dried meat. "Venison. It will give you strength." The meat was tough, seasoned with herbs she didn't recognize, but her empty stomach welcomed it. They ate without speaking, the desert night closing around them like a living thing. Stars emerged in numbers that still amazed her, countless diamonds scattered across black velvet. Back east, she'd never seen stars like this. "Do you miss it?" Kiona asked suddenly. "Your home in the east?" Clara considered. "I miss safety, knowing what each day would bring. But that life..." She thought of the suffocating propriety, the whispers that followed her after James died, the men who saw her widowhood as an opportunity. "No, I don't miss it. Safety is an illusion." Kiona said, "The desert teaches this. The rock that shelters you from sun can fall and crush you. The spring that saves your life can run dry. Better to accept danger and learn to move with it." A coyote called in the distance, answered by another. The sound made Clara shiver despite the warm night. Kiona noticed and moved closer, though still maintaining a careful distance. "They sing to the moon," he explained. "Telling stories of the hunt, they will not bother us. Coyote is clever. He knows humans mean trouble. Unlike wolves. Wolves are different, honest in their hunger. But wolves are gone from here now. Your people's cattle could not share the land with them." There was no accusation in his tone, just fact. Clara watched him in the firelight, noting how he constantly scanned their surroundings even while talking. "You speak English well. Where did you learn?" "The mission school. When I was young, the priests thought they could save our souls by stealing our words." His smile was bitter. "I learned their language but kept my own. Knowledge of enemies is another kind of weapon." "Am I your enemy?" He looked at her directly then, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "I have not decided." The honesty of it should have frightened her. Instead, she found herself laughing, a surprised sound in the quiet night. "At least you're truthful about it. Lies are for people who have the luxury of safety." He seemed surprised by her laughter, studying her with new interest. "You are not like the other white women I have seen. Because I don't faint at the sight of blood? Or because I'm fool enough to trust an Apache warrior? Because you adapt. Most of your people try to bring the East with them, to force this land into shapes it was not meant to hold. You let the land change you instead." Clara felt heat in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. "I haven't had much choice in the matter." "There is always choice. You could have gone with Thornton's men, lived after a fashion. You could have stayed with your wagon, hoping for rescue. You could have shot me when I slept last night. Yes, I know you considered it. I saw you watching me, hand near the rifle." She flushed deeper. "How did you know?" "Because it is what I would have done in your place. Trust must be earned." He pulled out a flat piece of stone and began sharpening his knife with smooth, practiced strokes. "I do not blame you for the thought." They sat in companionable silence, the fire crackling between them. Clara found herself studying his profile, the strong lines of his face, the way his hair fell like black silk over his shoulders. He was handsome in a way that had nothing to do with the soft prettiness valued in her world. His beauty was like the desert itself, harsh, elemental, dangerous. "Tell me about the stars," she said, needing to break the spell of her thoughts. "Do your people have stories about them?" For the first time since she'd met him, Kiona's expression softened into something approaching warmth. "Many stories. See there?" He pointed to a cluster of stars. "Those are the lost warriors, placed in the sky after dying to protect their people. And there, the elk who walks backwards. He was too proud. So the gods made him walk forever in reverse as punishment." He told her stories as the night deepened, tales of Spider Grandmother weaving the world, of how coyotes stole fire for humans, of the star maidens who came down to dance with Apache boys and teach them the ways of love. His voice took on a different quality when he spoke of these things, looser, younger somehow. "My mother knew all the stories," he said. "She could talk all night, weaving words like patterns in a basket. I only remember pieces now. Tell me about her. She was beautiful, not just in face, in spirit. She could make anyone laugh, even my father, who was serious as stone. She died when I was 12. The spotted sickness your people brought." "Smallpox," Clara said quietly. "Yes. It took many that winter. The medicine men tried everything, but their power was not strong enough against this new death." He set down the sharpening stone. "My father was never the same. He led too many raids after that, took too many chances. The soldiers killed him 3 summers later." Clara understood that kind of grief, the way it could drive people to seek their own destruction. She'd seen it in James during his final months, pushing himself despite the fever, as if he could outwork death itself. A sudden gust of wind sent sparks swirling from their fire. The temperature had dropped, and Clara pulled her blanket closer, without a word. Kiona moved to her side of the fire, close enough that she could feel his warmth, but still maintaining that careful space between them. "Storm coming," he said, reading signs in the wind she couldn't see. "Not rain, sand. We will need shelter." He found it with the same mysterious skill he'd shown all day. A shallow cave hidden behind a fall of rocks. They moved their few possessions inside just as the wind began to howl in earnest. Soon the air filled with stinging sand, turning the night into a brown nightmare. Clara huddled against the cave wall, grateful for even this small protection. The storm raged like something alive, scouring the landscape with brutal efficiency. She thought of her abandoned wagon, probably buried by now, along with all her dreams of a simple new life in Las Cruces. "Are you afraid?" Kiona asked, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Yes," she admitted. There seemed no point in lying. "Fear is wise, but this will pass. The desert tests but does not destroy those who respect it." The storm grew worse, sand finding every gap in their shelter. Clara covered her face with her shawl, trying to breathe through the fabric. She felt Kiona move closer, his body blocking the worst of the wind. This near, she could smell sage and smoke on his skin, feel the solid strength of him. "Thank you," she whispered. He said nothing, but she felt him nod. They sat that way for hours, two strangers bound by circumstance, waiting for the desert's fury to pass. Clara dozed fitfully, waking sometimes to find she'd leaned against his shoulder, his warmth the only comfort in the howling darkness. When dawn finally came, it revealed a transformed world. Sand dunes had formed where none existed before. Their tracks were completely erased, as if they'd never passed this way. The spring was buried, though Kiona quickly found it again and cleared the sand away. As Clara emerged from the cave, stretching muscles cramped from the night's tension, she noticed Kiona watching her with an unreadable expression. "What is it?" "You survived your first real storm. Not many whites can say that." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "You asked if you were my enemy. You are not. Not anymore." The simple declaration moved her more than flowery speeches might have. She understood the gift he was giving, acceptance from a man whose people had every reason to hate hers. "What am I then?" she asked softly. He turned away, busying himself with their supplies. "That remains to be seen." But Clara had caught something in his eyes before he looked away, a flicker of warmth that matched the strange flutter in her own chest. The desert had stripped away more than just her civilized comforts. It was peeling back the layers of who she thought she was, revealing something rawer, truer underneath. As they prepared to continue their journey, Clara touched the place on Kiona's shoulder where a new scar was forming from yesterday's bullet graze. "This needs proper tending." He stilled at her touch but didn't pull away. "Later, we must make distance while the storm has hidden our trail." She let her hand fall, but the warmth of his skin lingered on her fingers. The sun climbed higher, promising another day of brutal heat. But somehow the challenge didn't seem as daunting now. She was changing, adapting, becoming something she didn't yet have words for. They mounted the paint horse and rode into the new day. Two unlikely companions bound by necessity and something else, something as dangerous and unpredictable as the land itself. The town of Agua Caliente sprawled like a festering wound against the desert floor. Adobe buildings lined the single main street, their walls pocked with bullet holes from countless disputes. It was the kind of place where law existed only at the end of a gun, where wanted men drank alongside merchants and no one asked questions about bloodstains or sudden wealth. Kiona had argued against coming here, but they needed supplies, ammunition, food, proper clothing for Clara. The makeshift moccasins had served their purpose, but wouldn't last much longer. They approached at midday when the heat kept most folks indoors. Kiona pulling his hair forward to partially hide his face, though there was no disguising what he was. "Keep your eyes down," he murmured as they dismounted at the edge of town. "Say nothing unless spoken to directly." Clara nodded, acutely aware of how she must look, dress torn and mended with strips of hide, face burned by sun, traveling with an Apache. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and everyone who saw them would know it. The general's store sat between a saloon and what appeared to be a brothel, judging by the painted women lounging on the balcony despite the heat. The proprietor, a heavy-set man with suspicious eyes, watched them enter with his hand resting on the shotgun beneath his counter. "We need supplies," Kiona said, placing silver coins on the scarred wood. "Ammunition, food, clothes for the woman." The man's eyes traveled from the money to Clara, his expression shifting from suspicion to disgust. We don't serve Apache lovers here. Clara felt heat flood her face, but before she could respond, Kiona moved, not threateningly. He simply shifted his stance in a way that made the shopkeeper's hand tighten on his hidden weapon. The money is good. Kiona said quietly, "We want no trouble." "You brought trouble the moment you walked in with that." The man jerked his chin at Clara. "White woman who'd lay with a savage. That's enough." Clara stepped forward, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "You'll take our money and give us what we need, or we'll take our business elsewhere. Ain't no elsewhere for 50 miles. Woman. And good luck finding anyone who'll—" The saloon doors burst open, cutting off his words. 3 men entered, range-hardened and armed, their eyes immediately finding Kiona. Clara recognized the type. Buffalo hunters, judging by the heavy rifles and the stink that preceded them. "Well, well," the largest said, tobacco juice staining his gray beard. "Boys, we got ourselves a Apache buck. Must be our lucky day. You know what the Army's paying for Apache scalps these days?" $30, another answered, hand drifting to his pistol. $50 if you bring him in alive for questioning." Kiona hadn't moved, but Clara felt the tension coiling in him like a spring. She stepped closer to him, a deliberate choice that made the hunter's eyes narrow. "This man is with me," she said. "We're leaving." "That so?" Graybeard spat on the floor. "Way I see it, Missy, you've been taken captive. Probably used hard, too, by the look of you. Don't worry. We'll free you from this animal. The only animals I see are standing right in front of me." The words came out harder than she'd intended. "Touch him and I'll—" "You'll what?" The hunter laughed. An ugly sound. "Defend your Apache lover? You're worse than him. Woman. Least he was born a savage. You chose to become one." The smallest hunter, younger than the others, had been circling to get behind Kiona. Clara saw him reaching for the knife at his belt and acted without thinking. The ceramic pitcher on the counter was heavy and solid. It shattered against the young man's skull, dropping him to his knees. Everything happened fast after that. Kiona's elbow caught Graybeard in the throat as the man went for his gun. The third hunter managed to clear leather, but Clara threw herself at him, spoiling his aim. The bullet went wide, shattering bottles behind the counter. Kiona's knife appeared as if by magic, pressing against Graybeard's neck as the man wheezed for air. "We are leaving," he said calmly. "You will not follow." The shopkeeper had his shotgun out now, but seemed unsure where to aim it. Clara grabbed a handful of ammunition boxes and shoved them into a flour sack, along with whatever foodstuffs she could reach. She found a man's shirt and canvas pants that might fit, adding them to her pile. "That's theft," the shopkeeper protested. Clara slammed more silver on the counter. Probably too much, but she didn't care. "No, that's payment, with extra for your silence." They backed out of the store, Kiona keeping his knife visible until they reached the door. The paint horse waited where they'd left it, ears flat against its head. Sensing trouble, they mounted quickly, Clara clutching the supplies. As they rode out, she heard the commotion starting behind them, angry voices, calls for pursuit. But Agua Caliente was a practical place. Chasing an Apache into the desert for the sake of a white woman's honor was bad business, especially when that woman had made her choice clear. They rode hard for an hour before Kiona slowed the pace. When he finally spoke, there was something new in his voice. "You defended me. They were going to kill you. Yes, for money. It is what they do." He was quiet for a moment. "No white woman has ever raised a hand to protect me before. Well, now one has." He turned in the saddle to look at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. "You realize what you have done? In their eyes, you are now less than human, contaminated. There is no going back from this." "Good," Clara said fiercely. "I've seen their humanity. I don't want it." They found shelter as the afternoon wore on. A grove of mesquite trees near a dry wash. Kiona scouted the area thoroughly before allowing them to rest. Clara changed into the men's clothing, grateful to be free of her ruined dress. The pants were too large, but she cinched them with a length of rope. The shirt hung loose but was clean and whole. "Better," Kiona said, noting her transformation. "You look less like prey now." Is that how I looked before? Prey. To men like those, yes, a woman alone is always prey, even among my people, though we have different ways of showing respect. He handed her some of the dried meat from their supplies. "You fought well in the store." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Fear and courage are not opposites. They exist together. A warrior without fear is just a fool waiting to die." He touched the place where the young hunter's knife would have gone in. "You saved my life. You saved mine first. Twice now. If we're counting. The Apache do not count such things. But," he hesitated, then continued, "there are debts that bind deeper than blood. You have created one today." Clara didn't fully understand what he meant, but she sensed the weight of it. They ate in companionable silence, the late afternoon light turning the mesquite leaves to gold. She found herself studying him again, the graceful economy of his movements, the way he remained alert even in rest. "What will you do when we reach the mountains?" she asked. "I can't keep taking you away from your people." "My people are scattered, some to Mexico, some to the reservation, some still fighting in small bands." His voice held old pain. "I go where the wind takes me now. That's no way to live. It is the only way left to live free." He looked at her intently. "What will you do? Las Cruces may not welcome you now, not after being seen with me." Clara hadn't let herself think that far ahead. "I don't know. Find work, maybe, or keep going west. California, perhaps." "Alone?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither seemed ready to address. Clara felt something shifting, like tectonic plates grinding deep underground. The careful distance they'd maintained was eroding with each shared danger, each moment of trust, as if reading her thoughts. Kiona stood abruptly. "We should move. Thornton's men are still out there, and now these hunters too." The desert grows crowded with enemies. They traveled through the cooling evening, following a path that wound between towering saguaro cacti. The giants stood like sentinels, arms raised to the darkening sky. Bats emerged from their daytime roosts, filling the air with chittering song. "Look!" Kiona pointed to a cactus flower blooming impossibly white in the gathering dusk. "It opens only at night, for one night only. By morning, it will be gone." "It's beautiful," Clara breathed. "But why bloom in darkness when no one can see? The desert teaches that beauty needs no witness. It exists for its own sake." He reached up and carefully plucked the flower, handing it to her, though perhaps some beauty is meant to be shared. Clara cradled the delicate bloom, aware of the gesture's significance. Among her people, a man gave flowers as courtship. She wondered if it meant the same to the Apache, or if she was reading too much into simple kindness. Night fell as they climbed higher into the foothills. The temperature dropped, and Clara shivered in her thin shirt. Without a word, Kiona pulled a blanket from his pack and draped it around her shoulders, his hands lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "There," he said, pointing to a cluster of lights below. "A mining camp. We'll circle wide around it." But even as he spoke, Clara saw other lights moving on the ridge opposite, torches or lanterns, spread out in a search pattern. "They're looking for us," she said. "Yes, the word has spread. An Apache and a white woman. It offends everyone's sense of the proper order." His voice held bitter amusement. "Your people and mine finally agree on something." They changed direction, moving higher into terrain that grew increasingly treacherous. The paint horse picked its way carefully among loose rocks and narrow ledges. Clara pressed close to Kiona's back, trying not to look at the drops yawning beneath them. "Are you frightened?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted, then added with shaky humor, "But I'm getting used to it." She felt him chuckle, a low rumble in his chest. "You would make a good Apache woman. They learn to laugh at fear too." The words sent an unexpected warmth through her that had nothing to do with the shared blanket. She wondered what he'd meant by them, a compliment to her courage, or something more. The moon rose full and bright, silvering the landscape into something otherworldly. They finally stopped at a high meadow where ancient pines whispered secrets to the stars. Kiona built a small fire in a depression where it wouldn't be seen from below. "Tomorrow we reach the high passes," he said. "After that, we must decide." "Decide what?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "Whether we continue together or part ways, you could still go to Las Cruces, claim I kidnapped you. They might believe it, might take you back. Is that what you want? For me to lie? To pretend none of this happened?" "What I want," he stopped himself, jaw tightening. "What I want does not matter. You must choose your own path." Clara studied his profile in the firelight, seeing the conflict written there. 3 days ago, she'd been a different woman with different dreams. That Clara would have chosen safety, propriety, the known world. But that woman had been dying slowly, suffocating under the weight of others' expectations. "I've already chosen," she said softly. Kiona turned to look at her, hope and wariness battling in his dark eyes. The space between them seemed to hum with possibility, dangerous and sweet as the night-blooming cactus flower she still carried. Neither moved to close that distance, not yet. But something had shifted, acknowledged if not acted upon. They sat by the dying fire as the moon traced its path across the sky. Two people caught between worlds, finding in each other an unexpected chance at something new. The ambush came at dawn in a narrow canyon where the walls pressed close and the sky was just a ribbon of pale light above. Clara woke to Kiona's hand over her mouth, his body tense as a drawn bow. "They found us," he whispered. She heard it then, the clink of metal on stone. Horses breathing hard from the climb, many horses. Kiona was already moving, gathering their few possessions with silent efficiency. The paint horse stood with ears pricked, trained to silence. "This way." He led her to a cleft in the rocks, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "If something happens, you run. Don't look back. I won't leave you." The first shot cut off her words, the bullet sparking off the rock inches from Kiona's head. He shoved Clara toward the cleft as more gunfire erupted, the canyon filling with thunder and echoing chaos. "Thornton!" The voice boomed off the canyon walls. "And 15 men! Come out! Indian! Give us the woman and we might let you die quick!" Kiona had taken position behind a boulder, his rifle ready. Clara could see the calculation in his eyes, the narrow canyon that prevented the outlaws from spreading out, but also trapped them here. "The woman comes of her own will," Kiona called back. "Ask her yourself." "Don't matter what she wants now," Thornton replied. "She's been spoiled by Apache hands, only good for one thing now, and my boys have been patient long enough." Rage flooded Clara, hot and cleansing. These men who spoke of her like property, who thought they could take what they wanted, she was done running from them. She grabbed the pistol from their supplies. "You want me, Thornton!" she shouted, surprising everyone, including Kiona. "Come and take me yourself, you coward!" Silence for a moment, then ugly laughter. "Little wildcat's grown claws. Boys'll enjoy taming you." The attack came from 2 directions, while gunfire kept Kiona pinned. 3 men scaled the canyon walls to get above them. Clara saw them first, silhouetted against the brightening sky. "Above us!" she cried, firing upward. Her shot went wide but warned Kiona in time. He rolled aside as bullets struck where he'd been, came up shooting with deadly precision. One man tumbled from the heights, screaming until he hit the rocks below. But there were too many. They pressed forward using covering fire, professional and coordinated. These weren't just outlaws. Thornton had hired gunmen for this hunt. A bullet creased Kiona's shoulder, spinning him around. Another caught him in the thigh, dropping him to one knee. "No!" Clara ran to him, helping him to cover as blood soaked through his pants. His face had gone pale beneath the bronze, but his hands remained steady on the rifle. "The cleft!" he gritted out. "Go! Not without you." She tore strips from her shirt to bind his leg, working with desperate efficiency as bullets whined overhead. The outlaws were closing in, emboldened by Kiona's wounds. She could hear their boots on stone, their eager voices. That's when the rain started. Not gentle drops, but a sudden deluge, as if the sky had split open. In seconds, the dusty canyon floor became a rushing stream. Clara had heard of flash floods, but never imagined how fast they came. "High ground!" Kiona gasped, understanding immediately. They scrambled for the rocks as water rose with terrifying speed. The narrow canyon that had been their trap became the outlaws' doom. Men screamed as the flood caught them, horses neighing in terror as they were swept away. Clara saw Thornton clinging to a rock, his scarred face twisted in fear before the current took him. She and Kiona barely made it to a ledge as water roared past, carrying bodies and debris. They pressed against the canyon wall, rain soaking them to the skin, watching nature accomplish what bullets couldn't. In minutes, the flood had scoured the canyon clean. They stayed on the ledge as the water gradually receded, leaving behind mud and devastation. Kiona's blood mixed with rainwater, his face growing paler by the moment. Clara worked frantically to stop the bleeding, using their medical supplies with hands that shook from cold and fear. "The spirit's answer," Kiona murmured, half delirious. "Water from stone, life from death. Don't talk, save your strength." But she could see how bad it was. The thigh wound was deep, possibly hitting the artery. They needed shelter, proper medical supplies, neither of which existed in these mountains. Kiona would die here, and the thought filled her with desperate terror. "There's a place," he said, fighting to focus. "My people's winter camp, abandoned now, but supplies hidden, 2 hours north. You can't ride 2 hours like this. Then you leave me." His hand found hers, grip weak but insistent. "Take the horse. Find safety. Stop talking nonsense." Clara helped him stand, taking most of his weight. "We go together or not at all." Getting him on the horse was agony for both of them. Clara mounted behind him, arms around his waist to keep him upright as they picked their way out of the Death Canyon. The rain had stopped as suddenly as it came, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming. Kiona drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling in Apachean English. Clara followed his earlier directions, praying she understood correctly. The sun climbed higher, steam rising from the wet earth like incense. Birds began to sing again, the desert returning to life after the storm. She almost missed the camp. It was so well hidden among the rocks and pines. Ancient fire rings and grinding stones marked where families had wintered for generations. Kiona roused enough to point toward a particular rock formation. "There! Cache hidden there." Clara found it after frantic searching, a natural cave sealed with stones, containing blankets, dried food, and most importantly, medical supplies. The medicines were Apache, plants and powders she didn't recognize. But Kiona managed to tell her which ones to use before unconsciousness took him completely. She worked through the day, cleaning wounds, applying poultices, binding torn flesh. The thigh wound was bad but hadn't hit the main artery. A small mercy. Still, he'd lost so much blood, and fever was already setting in. As night fell, Clara built a fire and made camp as best she could. She cradled Kiona's head in her lap, wiping his burning face with cool water, speaking to him though he couldn't hear. "You can't die," she told him. "Not now. Not when I've just found you." The words surprised her with their truth, somewhere between fear and flight, gratitude and growing trust. She'd fallen in love with this complex man who'd saved her life at the cost of his own. He muttered in his delirium, calling names she didn't know, his sister, his parents, others lost to violence and time. Sometimes he spoke to her, urgent words in Apache she couldn't understand. She held him through it all, her presence the only medicine she could offer against the darkness. Dawn came slowly, painting the abandoned camp in soft colors. Kiona's fever had broken in the night, and when his eyes opened, they were clear if weak. "Clara," his voice was a whisper. "I'm here." She smoothed his hair back, not caring that tears were running down her face. "You're safe. We're safe." He lifted a trembling hand to touch her cheek. "You stayed." "Of course I stayed, you fool. Where else would I go?" Home, your people, your life. You are my life now. The words came out fierce and certain. Do you understand? You are my choice. Something shifted in his dark eyes. Wonder, perhaps, or recognition of a truth too large for words. They stayed like that as the morning strengthened, her hands gentle on his face, his eyes holding hers with intensity that made her heart race. Clara, he said finally, I need to tell you, rest now. Tell me when you're stronger. But he shook his head, struggling to sit up despite her protests. No, you must know. He took a breath, gathering strength. Among my people, when a warrior owes a life debt, when a woman saves him from death, there are words that must be said. Clara waited, heart pounding. You hold my life in your hands, he said formally, though his voice shook. My breath is your breath. My heart beats at your word. I am yours until the mountains crumble and the stars fall from the sky. The ancient words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Clara understood this was more than gratitude, more than obligation. This was declaration, promise, a binding deeper than any Christian marriage vow. Do you mean, I love you, he said simply, abandoning formality. I have loved you since you stood between me and those men in the store, since you refused to leave me, since you looked at me and saw a man, not a savage. Clara couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. Instead, she leaned down and kissed him softly, carefully, mindful of his wounds. He made a sound like breaking and pulled her closer with his good arm, the kiss deepening into something desperate and necessary. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Kiona touched her face with wonder. Your people and mine will call this wrong. Then we'll make our own people, Clara said fiercely. Our own world where love matters more than the color of skin or the name of gods. He smiled then, the first true smile she'd seen from him, and it transformed his face entirely. Brave words, little wildcat. The world does not change easily. Then we'll force it to... together. She helped him drink water, eat a little of the dried meat. His strength was returning slowly, though it would be days before he could travel. Days they might not have if other hunters came looking. There's something else, Kiona said. The cache. Look for a leather bundle, marked with red. Clara found it, unwrapping layers of soft hide to reveal treasures, silver jewelry, turquoise beads, and most surprisingly, a small leather-bound book. My mother's, Kiona explained. She learned to write at the mission school, kept a journal in both languages. He pressed it into Clara's hands. I want you to have it, to know who we were before everything changed. Clara opened the book carefully, seeing pages filled with neat writing, sketches of plants and animals, pressed flowers still holding faint color. It was a window into a world being systematically destroyed, preserved in ink and memory. I'll treasure it, she promised. They spent the day in quiet intimacy, Clara tending his wounds while Kiona told her stories of this place, which families camped where, the children who played in the stream, the ceremonies that marked the turning seasons. It was a glimpse of the life that had been stolen from him, the community scattered to wind. As afternoon shadows lengthened, they heard horses approaching. Clara grabbed the rifle, ready to defend their sanctuary, but Kiona caught her arm. Wait, listen. The rhythm was different, slower, more cautious. A single rider, not a war party. Still, Clara kept the weapon ready as a figure appeared through the pines. The rider was an old Apache woman, her face mapped with years of sun and sorrow. She dismounted with surprising agility, studying Clara with sharp black eyes before speaking to Kiona in their language. Clara caught her own name several times, and Bilagana, white person. This is Maria, Kiona explained. She was my mother's friend. She says the soldiers are coming. A big patrol, looking for raiders who hit a supply wagon. They'll search every canyon, every old camp. Maria spoke again, gesturing at Kiona's wounds. At Clara, her tone urgent. She offers to take you to town. Kiona translated, his voice carefully neutral. She has a wagon, Can say you're her employer. You be safe. And you? I know places to hide until I heal. Clara looked at Maria, seeing the offer for what it was, a last chance to return to her own world, to reclaim some semblance of her old life. The old woman waited patiently, no judgment in her weathered face. Tell her thank you, Clara said, but I stay. Maria studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She spoke to Kiona, pulled supplies from her horse, medicine, ammunition, food, then mounted again. Before leaving, she placed a gnarled hand on Clara's head and said something that sounded like a blessing. What did she say? Clara asked after the woman disappeared into the trees. She said, you have a warrior's heart in a small body, and that my mother would have liked you. Kiona's voice was thick with emotion. She also said, we're fools, but perhaps the world needs more fools. They couldn't stay at the winter camp with the soldiers coming. As soon as Kiona could ride, they packed what they could carry and headed deeper into the mountains. Clara had become adept at reading the land's subtle signs, which plants held water, where game trails led, how to move without leaving traces. They traveled by night when possible, resting in hidden places during the day. Kiona's wounds were healing, though he still tired easily. Clara had taken to scouting ahead, learning to move with the quiet grace he'd taught her. It was during one of these scouts that she found the perfect place, a box canyon with a spring, grass for the horse, caves for shelter, and only one narrow entrance easily defended. She returned excited to share her discovery, finding Kiona sitting in the shade, working on something with his knife. I found it, she said breathlessly. Our place. It's perfect, hidden, with water and... What are you making? He held up his work, a hair comb carved from pale wood, decorated with delicate flowers and vines. The craftsmanship was exquisite, each detail precise despite his still healing hands. For you, he said simply, a proper gift, not stolen from the desert in darkness. Clara took it reverently, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Among her people, such a gift meant intention, promise, futures intertwined. It's beautiful, as are you. He caught her hand, pulled her down beside him. Clara, I need to speak truth. My life is uncertain. Soldiers hunt me. My people are scattered. I have nothing to offer but myself, wounded, hunted, caught between worlds. You deserve... She stopped his words with a kiss, pouring all her feelings into the contact, love, frustration at his doubts, certainty about her choice. When they parted, she kept her face close to his. Listen to me, she said fiercely. I've had what I deserve according to others, a proper marriage to a proper man, a proper life that was killing me slowly. You offer yourself as if that's not enough, but you're everything. Do you understand? Everything. His hands framed her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones with reverent wonder. How did this happen? How did you become my whole sky? The same way you became mine, she whispered. They moved to her discovered canyon that evening, finding it even better than she'd described. A small cave near the spring showed signs of ancient habitation, smoke-blackened ceiling, grinding stones worn smooth by countless hands. It felt like a benediction, as if the old ones approved their presence, as they made camp. Clara found herself studying Kiona in the firelight. The harsh lines of his face had softened in recent days, the constant vigilance easing into something approaching peace. He caught her looking and raised an eyebrow. What do you see? He asked. My future, she said simply. He went very still. Then, moving with deliberate care, he stood and pulled her to her feet. Among my people, there are words for this moment, but I think we need our own words. Neither Apache nor white, but something new. Yes, Clara breathed. He took her hands, firelight dancing in his dark eyes. I promise you my strength when you are weak, my courage when you are afraid. I promise to see you not as Apache or white, but as Clara, fierce and true and mine. I promise to build a world with you where love is the only law that matters. Clara's vision blurred with tears. I promise to stand beside you against all storms, to be your shelter as you are mine. I promise to honor both the warrior and the man, to learn your ways while keeping my own. I promise to love you until the stars burn out and beyond. Then you are my wife." Kiona said softly, "In the eyes of earth and sky, if not in the eyes of men. And you are my husband," Clara replied. "Let the world say what it will." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Clara felt the last walls between them crumble. When he drew her toward the blankets they'd spread in the cave, she went willingly, ready for this final crossing. He was gentle despite his intensity, treating her body like something sacred. Clara had known the marriage bed before, but this was different, a mutual exploration, a conversation without words, a binding deeper than flesh. They moved together in the firelight, two souls recognizing their match, creating something new in the ancient dance. Afterward, they lay entwined, sweat cooling on their skin. Clara traced the scars on Kiona's chest, each one a story of survival. He caught her hand, kissing her fingertips. "No regrets?" he asked. "Only that it took so long to find you." They talked through the night, making plans. They would stay in the hidden canyon through winter, then perhaps head to Mexico, where mixed couples faced less persecution, or California, where gold fever made people care more about wealth than race. Somewhere they could live freely, maybe even raise children who would bridge both worlds. "Children," Kiona repeated, wonder in his voice. "I had not dared think." "Why not? Don't you want them? More than breath, but the world we would give them will be better than the one we inherited." Clara said firmly, "It has to be." Dawn found them sitting at the canyon entrance, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. The world spread before them, vast and challenging, but no longer threatening. They had each other now, and that changed everything. "Tell me you love me," Clara said softly, remembering her long-ago dream of hearing those words, instead of speaking. Kiona turned to her with that intense gaze that had first captured her. Then he kissed her, not gentle this time, but passionate, claiming. A kiss that burned through her like wildfire and left her gasping. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressing hers against the warm stone, the kiss speaking all the words that language couldn't capture. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Is that answer enough?" he asked, voice rough. "Yes," she managed, "though I may need reminding frequently." He laughed, the sound rich and free. "That I can promise, little wildcat. Every day until my last breath." A shadow passed overhead, an eagle riding the morning thermals. Clara watched it soar, understanding its freedom in a way she never could have before. She too had found her wings, even if they'd come from falling. "What are you thinking?" Kiona asked, pulling her closer. "That I was born for this," she said. "For you, for this life. Everything that came before was just the path leading here." "The Apache believe all paths are chosen before we walk them," he said. "That the spirits guide us even when we think we're lost. Then I thank whatever spirits brought us together. They spent the morning exploring their new domain, finding hidden pools and game trails, marking the boundaries of their small kingdom. It wasn't the life Clara had imagined when she left Missouri, but it was real and raw and theirs. As the sun climbed towards noon, they returned to the cave to escape the heat. Kiona produced his mother's journal again, teaching Clara basic Apache words, sharing the stories preserved in fading ink. She learned that his full name meant Brown Hills for the place of his birth, that his clan had been known for their skill with horses, that his grandmother had been a powerful medicine woman. "Will you teach me?" Clara asked. "Everything, the language, the medicines, the proper ways. If you wish, but you must also teach me how to live in your world, how to walk between as you do. I'm hardly an expert at that." "No?" He smiled. "You left everything behind for love. You fought beside a warrior. You chose a new path with clear eyes. That takes wisdom I still seek." That evening, as they prepared their simple meal, Clara felt a profound contentment. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, soldiers to avoid, supplies to find, a future to build from nothing but will and love. But tonight, in their hidden canyon with the stars emerging overhead, they were simply a man and woman who had found each other against all odds. "Sing for me," Kiona requested suddenly. "I have not heard you sing." Clara blushed. "I'm not very good. Please." So she sang an old ballad her mother had taught her, about a maiden who followed her lover across the sea. Her voice echoed off the canyon walls, clear and true in the desert air. When she finished, Kiona was looking at her with such tenderness it took her breath away. "Now you," she said. He sang in Apache, a low, rhythmic chant that seemed to rise from the earth itself. She didn't understand the words, but felt their power, ancient sounds that connected him to countless generations, to this land that had shaped his people. When silence fell again, they sat close together. No need for words. The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows on stone walls that had witnessed centuries of human dreams. Tomorrow they would face the world's judgment, but tonight they were complete. Clara thought of the woman she'd been just days ago, proper, confined, slowly dying inside the boundaries others had drawn for her. That woman was gone, burned away by desert sun and desperate flight, by violence survived and love discovered. In her place sat someone new, harder, freer, more truly herself than she'd ever been. "No regrets," she murmured. Not a question this time, but a declaration. Kiona's arm tightened around her. "None," he agreed. "Whatever comes, this is worth it all." The stars wheeled overhead, ancient witnesses to their unlikely love, and in a hidden canyon in the New Mexico mountains, two hearts beat as one, creating their own world in defiance of all who would keep them apart. The smoke was visible from miles away, black columns rising into the morning sky like accusations against heaven. Kiona had gone rigid in the saddle, his body coiled with dread. They'd been traveling for 2 days, heading to a trading post Maria had mentioned. When they saw it, "No," he breathed, urging the paint horse to greater speed. Clara clung to him as they raced across the desert floor, her heart hammering with shared fear. She knew what that smoke meant, had seen enough burned homesteads to recognize the signature of violence. They crested a rise, and the scene below struck them like a physical blow. What had been a small Apache camp was now a charred ruin. Wickiups smoldered, their dome shapes collapsed into ash. Bodies lay scattered among the ruins. Women, elders, children. The earth was torn by cavalry hooves, spent cartridges glinting in the harsh sun. Kiona was off the horse before it fully stopped, running toward the devastation. Clara followed, her stomach churning at the sights that greeted them. These weren't combatants. This was a family group, probably trying to reach the reservation peacefully. "Kiona!" A weak voice called from beneath a partially burned shelter. They found a young Apache woman, perhaps 17, cradling a baby. Blood soaked through her dress from a bullet wound in her side. Her eyes, glazed with pain, focused on Kiona with desperate hope. "Anna." He dropped to his knees beside her, hands already moving to examine her wound. "What happened?" "Soldiers came at dawn," she gasped in Apache, which Clara was beginning to understand. "Said we were raiders. We tried to tell them. We were just traveling to the agency. They didn't care." Clara grabbed their medical supplies, working alongside Kiona to stop the bleeding, but she could see it was too late. Too much damage, too much blood lost. The girl knew it too. "Take him." Anna pressed the baby into Kiona's arms. "My son, please. He has no one else now. Anna, promise me." Her voice held the fierce strength of a mother's last wish. "Raise him free, not on the reservation, not penned like cattle. Free." "I promise," Kiona said, his voice thick. "He will know his people. He will be free." Anna's eyes found Clara. "You, white woman, you stay with him?" "Always," Clara said, not needing translation. "I swear it." Something like peace crossed the dying girl's face. She touched her son's cheek once more, whispered a name. "Samuel." for his father who died believing in peace and was gone. They spent hours checking for other survivors. Found none. Kiona worked in terrible silence, gathering the dead for proper burial while Clara tended the baby. Samuel was perhaps 6 months old, with his mother's dark eyes and a resilient spirit that had him grasping Clara's finger despite everything. 15 dead, Kiona said finally, his voice hollow. 7 were children. Clara had no words for such horror. She helped him dig graves in the hard earth, her hands blistering from the work. They labored through the heat of the day, determined to give these people dignity in death. As the sun began to sink, they heard horses approaching. Kiona reached for his rifle, but it was Maria who appeared, leading a small group of Apache survivors. Their faces told the story. They'd seen the smoke too, had hoped against hope. An older man Clara recognized as Pablo, a respected elder, surveyed the scene with ancient grief in his eyes. He spoke at length with Kiona, gesturing to the graves, to the baby in Clara's arms, to the horizons where more smoke columns were rising. "What's happening?" Clara asked. "The army has new orders." Kiona translated, his jaw tight. "All Apache must report to the reservation immediately or be considered hostile. They're sweeping the territory, attacking any groups they find. But these people were going to the reservation. It doesn't matter. The soldiers see Apache and shoot first." His eyes were dark with rage and pain. This is how they solved the Apache problem, with bullets and fire. Pablo spoke again, his words urgent. Maria added her voice, gesturing emphatically at Clara and the baby. "They say we must go." Kiona explained, "More soldiers are coming, but—" He hesitated, conflict clear in his face. "My people need fighters. Need me to— To what? Die gloriously in battle?" Clara's voice was sharp with fear. "Leave Samuel orphaned again? Leave me? You don't understand. This is my people's extinction. They plan— How can I run while they die? How can you help them by dying too?" She shifted Samuel to one arm, gripped Kiona's hand with the other. "We made promises, to each other, to Anna. Or do those matter less than revenge?" The struggle in his face was terrible to see. Every instinct, every tradition called him to fight. But love and newfound responsibility pulled him another direction. Pablo spoke again, more gently. He placed a weathered hand on Kiona's shoulder, on the baby's head, speaking words that sounded like a blessing and a release. "He says the old ways of fighting are ending." Kiona translated slowly. "That saving one Apache child, raising him free and proud, may matter more than killing soldiers. He says—" His voice broke slightly. "He says my war is different now. A war of survival, not vengeance." Maria pressed a bundle into Clara's hands. Cradleboard, blankets, traditional items for raising an Apache child. She spoke directly to Clara, her tone formal. "She names you sister." Kiona says any woman who stands with us in these times is Apache in her heart. She asks you to remember this when you teach Samuel who he is." Clara blinked back tears. "Tell her I'm honored. Tell her I'll guard him with my life." They left as darkness fell, the survivors scattering in different directions. Some would try for Mexico, others for the reservation, each choosing their own path through the narrowing world. Kiona led them west, away from the smoke and death. Samuel secured to Clara's chest in the cradleboard. They rode through the night, putting distance between themselves and the horror. The baby fussed occasionally, and Clara learned to comfort him with the rhythm of movement, the way Apache mothers had for generations. Kiona was silent, wrestling with demons she could only imagine. Dawn found them in high country, pine-scented and cool. They stopped by a stream to rest and feed Samuel with the goat's milk Maria had provided. As Clara tended the baby, she watched Kiona standing apart, staring east toward where his people died. "Talk to me," she said softly. "I should be with them, fighting, dying if necessary. It's what warriors do. Is it, or is that just what warriors have always done?" She adjusted Samuel's blankets, this unexpected addition to their fractured family. "Maybe being a warrior now means something different. Maybe it means living when they want you dead. raising the next generation when they want you extinct. He turned to her, and she saw tears on his face, the first she'd witnessed. I feel like a coward. You're the bravest man I know. It takes more courage to choose life than death, more strength to build than to destroy. She rose, still holding Samuel, and went to him. This child needs you. I need you. Isn't that worth fighting for? He pulled them both into his arms, holding them as if they were all that kept him anchored to the earth. Samuel made a contented sound, small fist wrapping around Kiona's finger. He's strong, Kiona murmured. Like his mother. He'll need to be. The world we're giving him. Clara couldn't finish. Will be better than the one that killed his parents. It has to be. He echoed her own words back to her, finding strength in them. They made camp in a sheltered grove, exhausted by grief and flight, as Clara fashioned a proper sling for Samuel from her shawl. She marveled at how quickly life could change. 3 days ago, they'd been planning a simple future for 2. Now they were 3, bound by tragedy and promise. We'll need supplies, she said practically. For him, milk, proper food when he's older. We can't stay in the wilderness with a baby. There's a town called Prescott, 2 days west. Mining town. Rough, but they care more about silver than skin color. We could... He hesitated. We could say he's yours, that his father was Mexican. It might be safer. The thought of denying Samuel's heritage hurt, but Clara understood the necessity. A half-Mexican baby would face prejudice, but not murder. An Apache child would be a target. We'll tell him the truth when he's older, she said. Make sure he knows who he really is. Yes, when the world is ready for him to be Apache and proud of it. That night, as they took turns walking with the fussing baby, Clara thought about the strange turns of fate. She'd left Missouri seeking a new life and found something beyond imagination. Love that defied convention. A family built from loss and choice rather than blood. Do you regret taking him? Kiona asked during one of their night watches. No. Do you regret that our life just became infinitely more complicated? Our life was never going to be simple. He traced Samuel's sleeping face with one finger. Maybe this is what we're meant for. To be a bridge, Apache and white, raising a child who belongs to both and neither. A dangerous bridge to be. All bridges are dangerous. They connect things meant to be separate. He looked at her with that intensity that still made her breath catch. But without bridges, how do people find each other? The next morning brought new challenges. Samuel needed more milk than they had, and Clara could see signs of dehydration. They had to reach civilization soon, whatever the risks. As they prepared to leave, Clara noticed Kiona conducting a small ceremony, sprinkling pollen in 4 directions, speaking words in Apache, including Samuel formally in the ritual. I'm asking the spirits to accept him as my son, he explained. Blood of my blood in all ways that matter, asking them to protect him on this difficult path. And me? Clara asked. Am I included in this protection? Kiona smiled, the expression transforming his grief-worn face. You, wife of my heart, were under their protection from the moment you chose to stay, but... He produced a small leather pouch, hanging it around her neck. This is medicine Maria made, for strength, for wisdom, for the mother courage you'll need. Clara touched the pouch, feeling the weight of acceptance, of belonging to something ancient and enduring despite the forces trying to destroy it. She thought of her mother, who would be horrified to see her now, dressed in men's clothes, hair wild, riding with an Apache warrior and raising an Indian baby as her own. But her mother had never felt this alive, this purposeful, had never known love that remade the world, responsibility that transcended self. Clara wouldn't trade this difficult, dangerous life for all the safety of civilization. Ready? Kiona asked, helping her mount with Samuel secured to her chest. For anything, she replied, meaning it. They rode toward the rising sun, toward an uncertain future, but they rode together. Behind them, smoke still stained the sky, testament to a dying way of life. Ahead lay the challenge of keeping that life alive in new forms, in hidden ways, in the heart of a child who would grow up between worlds. Samuel stirred against Clara's chest, making soft baby sounds that transcended any language. She kissed his dark head, this unexpected gift born from tragedy, and made silent promises. To Anna, to Kiona, to herself. They would survive. They would endure. They would create something new from the ashes of the old. The desert stretched before them, harsh and beautiful as always. Indifferent to human struggles, but somehow blessing those strong enough to accept its terms. And they were strong, made so by love, by loss, by the choice to continue when stopping would be easier. Look, Kiona pointed to where an eagle circled high above. A good sign. Eagles watch over warriors and their families. Clara shifted Samuel so he could see the magnificent bird, though his baby eyes couldn't focus that far. Someday she would tell him about this moment, how his journey began with death but continued with love, how an eagle blessed his path, how two people who should have been enemies became his parents instead. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning coolness. They had far to go, dangers to face, a life to build from fragments. But they had each other, and now they had Samuel, proof that life persists, that love transcends hatred, that the future might yet hold healing for wounds that seemed mortal. Clara began to hum, an old lullaby her mother had sung, but with a rhythm that matched the horse's gait, matched the Apache songs Kiona had taught her. Samuel settled at the sound, content between two heartbeats that had chosen him, chosen each other, chosen hope in a time of despair. The trail stretched on, winding toward tomorrow. The final confrontation came where it all began, in the shadow of the red mesas where Clara's wagon had broken down weeks ago. They'd been traveling toward Prescott when Kiona spotted the dust cloud of many riders, not random travelers. These moved with military precision. Cavalry, he said grimly. A full company. They took cover in a cluster of rocks, Samuel thankfully sleeping against Clara's chest. Through Kiona's field glasses, they could see the soldiers clearly. At their head rode a face Clara recognized with a chill. Colonel Marcus Webb, the man who'd ordered the attack on Anna's camp. "They're following our trail," Kiona observed. "They have Apache scouts with them. Reservation Apache forced to hunt their own. Can we go around them?" He studied the terrain with the eye of someone born to this land. "No, they're spread too wide, and they know we're here. See, they're already moving to cut off escape routes." Clara's heart hammered as she watched the systematic encirclement. These weren't outlaws driven by greed. These were professional soldiers executing a plan. "What do we do?" Kiona was silent for a long moment, his face cycling through emotions, rage, despair, calculation. Then something else settled over his features. Resolution. "We don't run," he said quietly. "Running means they chase us forever. Samuel deserves better than a life of flight." "Then we fight." Clara checked their ammunition, not nearly enough against a cavalry company. "No." He turned to her with that intense gaze. "We do something they don't expect. We talk." Before Clara could protest, Kiona stood, hands visible but near his weapons. He called out in English, his voice carrying clearly across the desert morning. "Colonel Webb, I am Kiona of the Chiricahua Apache. I would speak with you under a white flag." Activity erupted in the cavalry line. Clara saw rifles raised, heard sharp commands, but Webb himself rode forward, stopping just out of easy rifle range. "You're the one who's been leaving bodies across the territory," Webb called. "Why should I talk instead of shoot?" "Because I have information you need," Kiona replied, "about the raiders you really seek, and because I travel with a white woman and child who deserve better than dying in crossfire." Clara understood his strategy now, use their presence to force a negotiation. She stood as well, Samuel visible in his cradleboard, making herself a shield against immediate violence. Webb rode closer, close enough that Clara could see his weathered face, the calculating eyes of a career soldier. "Mrs. Morrison, your family's been looking for you. They think you're dead. I'm very much alive. Colonel, and here by choice." His expression hardened. "No decent woman chooses to lie with savages. You've been influenced, corrupted. but we can help you return to civilization. I am civilized, Clara said coldly. More than men who murder sleeping families. Webb's jaw tightened. I don't murder. I follow orders. Every Apache off the reservation is hostile by law. Even babies? She shifted so he could see Samuel clearly. You killed his mother. She was traveling to the reservation when your men shot her. Is that your civilization? For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Webb's eyes, but duty reasserted itself. The child can go to the reservation schools. They'll raise him proper, make him white in all but blood. No. Kiona's voice was flat. I've seen your schools, where children die of sadness, forgetting their names, their language, their souls. He stays with us. Then you all die here. Webb raised his hand to signal the attack. Wait! Clara stepped forward. Colonel, you're a soldier. You follow orders. But you're also a man. Haven't you seen enough death? Doesn't some part of you want this to end? Webb's hand remained raised, but didn't fall. What I want doesn't matter. The Apache wars must end. Then let them. Kiona said, I'll tell you where the last raiding party hides, the ones who've been hitting supply wagons, killing civilians. Real hostiles, not women and children. In exchange, you let us go. Clara saw the struggle on Webb's face. Glory and promotion waited for whoever ended the raids, but making deals with Apache. You'd betray your own kind? Webb asked. Those who kill without purpose aren't my kind. Kiona replied, My kind are those who seek peace, who want children to grow without fear, Apache or white. It doesn't matter. Long moments passed. Samuel woke and began to fuss, his cries carrying across the still morning air. The sound seemed to affect the soldiers. Many were young, probably had younger siblings or children of their own. Finally, Webb lowered his hand. Talk, but if you're lying... Kiona gave precise directions to a canyon 40 miles south where a band of renegades hid. Clara knew he spoke truth. They'd carefully avoided that area in their travels. These were Apache who'd chosen war to the last, who'd lost too much to ever stop fighting. They'll fight, Kiona warned. They won't surrender. I don't expect them to. Webb studied him with something almost like respect. You know I should take you in anyway. Orders are orders. But sometimes men are more than their orders. Clara said, Sometimes they choose to see beyond black and white to find what's human. Webb was quiet for a long time. Around them, soldiers waited. Apache scouts watched. The desert held its breath. Samuel's cries had quieted to soft gurgling sounds. I'll give you one day, Webb said finally, 24 hours before I report this encounter. After that, every soldier in the territory will be looking for you. My advice? Get to Mexico, or better yet, California. Somewhere the Apache wars are just stories. He turned his horse but stopped, looking back. That raid you described. We'll find bodies of women and children there too, won't we? Apache who didn't want to fight. Yes, Kiona admitted. War makes monsters of everyone eventually. Webb nodded slowly. Maybe it's time for different choices. He raised his voice to his men. Company, we ride south, double time. The cavalry wheeled and departed in a thunder of hooves, leaving dust and amazement in their wake. Clara realized she'd been holding her breath and released it shakily. He let us go, she whispered. A soldier who remembers he's human, rare, but they exist. Kiona pulled her close, Samuel between them. We must use this gift wisely. California, like he said, gold country. Many peoples mixed together, too busy getting rich to care about bloodlines. They rode hard through the day, using every trick Kiona knew to confuse their trail. By evening, they'd reached the edge of Apache territory, looking back at the land that had shaped them both, Clara through trial, Kiona through generations. Will we ever come back? Clara asked. Someday, when Samuel is grown, when the world changes. This land is in our blood now, yours as much as mine. It calls its children home eventually. They made camp in a sheltered grove of cottonwoods, while Clara tended Samuel. Kiona hunted. Returning with rabbits for dinner, they ate quietly. each lost in thoughts of the day's reprieve and tomorrow's challenges. "I've been thinking," Clara said, "about California. We'll need a story, a way to fit in. You could say I'm Mexican. My grandmother was captive raised, taught me Spanish. In California, a Mexican man with an Eastern wife wouldn't raise many questions. And Samuel, our son, born of love if not blood." Kiona smiled at the baby. "By the time he's old enough to question, maybe the world will be ready for truth." That night, they held each other close, Samuel safe between them. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had watched their first meeting, their growing love, their transformation into something new. No more running after California. Clara said firmly, "We make a stand there, build a life, show the world that love is stronger than hate." A mixed couple with an Indian baby, trying to prove love conquers all. Kiona's tone was gently teasing. "You always did dream big, little wildcat. Someone has to. If we don't dream it, how will it ever become real?" He kissed her then, soft and deep, a promise without words. When they parted, his eyes held that intensity that still made her breathless. "Clara Morrison," he said formally, "will you marry me, properly, in a church, with papers that say we belong to each other in the white man's way as well as Apache?" "Yes," she said immediately, "though we're already married in every way that matters." "But Samuel deserves papers, a legal name, legal parents, the protection of law, even if hearts need no such things." She understood. It was capitulation to a system that shouldn't matter but did. It was also wisdom, ensuring their son had every advantage in a world that would challenge him enough. Dawn came with a benediction of birdsong. They broke camp efficiently, now practiced partners in survival. Samuel rode contentedly, making happy sounds at the passing scenery. "Look at him," Clara marveled. "So small, but already so strong. Like his mother was, like both his mothers are." Kiona corrected. "Anna gave him life. You're giving him a future." The trail wound west through changing country, desert giving way to pine forests, red rock to granite peaks. Each mile took them further from the Apache wars, but closer to their own battles for acceptance. On the third day, they saw it, California spreading golden before them, a land of possibility and reinvention. Miners' camps dotted the hills like scattered dice. Towns sprouted wherever gold showed itself. It was chaos and opportunity combined. There, Kiona pointed to a valley with a small town at its center, far enough from the border, big enough to disappear in, small enough to build community. "Home?" Clara asked. "If we make it so." They descended into the valley as the sun painted everything gold. People they passed. Miners, merchants, families. Barely glanced at them. Everyone here came from somewhere else, carrying stories they'd rather forget. They found a minister who asked no questions beyond their names. Clara Morrison and Kiona Delgado spoke their vows in a tiny chapel, while Samuel slept peacefully in Clara's arms. The ceremony was brief, the certificate precious, legal proof of belonging in a world that demanded such things. That night in a modest boarding house, their first night under a roof in weeks, they sat by the window watching the town settle into evening. Samuel lay between them, fed and content, tiny fist wrapped around Kiona's finger. "We did it," Clara said wonderingly. "We actually made it. The journey's just beginning." Kiona reminded her, "There will be hard times, people who hate what we are, dangers we can't foresee." "I know, but look how far we've come already, from that broken wagon to here. If we can survive that, we can survive anything." He completed her thought, their minds working as one. Clara looked at her family. This unlikely, impossible, perfect family built from love and loss and choice. Her husband, whose strength had saved her body while his tenderness had saved her soul. Their son, bridge between worlds, hope for a future none of them might live to see. "I love you," she said, words inadequate for the feeling. "Both of you, more than I knew was possible." Keona's response was in his eyes, his touch, the gentle way he adjusted Samuel's blanket. Love didn't need words between them anymore. It lived in every shared breath, every survived danger, every small act of building their new life. Outside, California buzzed with the energy of becoming, a place where people could remake themselves, where the past mattered less than the present. Not without prejudice, not without pain, but with possibility. Tomorrow we start building. Keona said, a home, a business, a place in this community. And someday, Clara added, when the world is ready, we'll tell our story. All of it, so others know it's possible to choose love over fear. Someday. He agreed. They sat together as full dark fell. Three souls who'd found each other across impossible odds. Behind them lay the desert and its trials. Ahead waited challenges they couldn't imagine. But tonight, they were together. Tonight, they were family. Tonight, love had won. Samuel stirred, making soft sounds that might have been contentment or dreams. Clara sang softly, an old lullaby with Apache rhythms. English words with desert cadences. A new song for a new world they were building one choice at a time. The stars appeared one by one, the same stars that watched over New Mexico's mesas and California's goldfields alike. Under their eternal gaze, a warrior and a widow and an orphaned child became something more. A future where love mattered more than bloodlines, where courage was measured in compassion, where different peoples might someday find common ground. It was a fragile hope, this small family against the world's prejudice. But it was theirs, earned in blood and tears and the 1,000 choices that led from a broken wagon wheel to this quiet room where love lived, breathed, and dared to dream of tomorrow. The desert had taught them its greatest lesson. Life persists, even in the harshest conditions. Beauty blooms, even in the darkest times. Love finds a way. And in a boarding house room in Gold Rush, California, 3 hearts beat as one. Proof that some things are stronger than the forces that would divide them. The end was just another beginning. Thank you for listening to this story of love conquering the impossible odds of the Wild West. If you're enjoying these tales of romance and adventure, please let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to connect with fellow Western romance enthusiasts around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more heart-stirring stories of love on the frontier. Share your thoughts below. Which part of Clara and Keona's journey touched your heart the most?